Right, let's dive into this. As Celtic gear up for another big European night, the mood around Parkhead is a strange mix of optimism and realism. On one hand, there's the excitement of continental football, but on the other, a lingering awareness that things in Europe aren't quite as straightforward as they once seemed. The days of automatic Champions League entry after winning the Scottish Premiership, those are slipping away, and fast. So today, we're peeling back the layers on something that isn't always front-page news, but massively impacts the club's future. UEFA coefficients, Scotland's place in the European game, and what it means for Celtic moving forward. Now, before jumping straight into the Celtic coefficient numbers, we've got to take a wider look at where Scotland stands in the UEFA rankings. A few years back, from around 2020 to 2024, Scotland was flying high. We were hovering between 9th and 11th place in the country coefficient table. That was a golden window. Those were the seasons when winning the league meant straight into the Champions League group stage. No qualifiers. No nerve-wracking trips to far-flung stadiums. Just straight into the action. That privilege lasted for 3 glorious years. But since then, the shine started to wear off. Despite what many would call a solid campaign last season from Scottish teams, Celtic held their own. Rangers did the usual strong Europa League run. We actually slid down the rankings. By the end of last season, Scotland had dropped to 14th. Ironically, that fall came after one of the best European seasons for Scottish clubs in years. But, unfortunately, the nations around us outperformed even our strongest efforts. That's how cutthroat the coefficient game is. And here's the kicker. There's a lag between a country's performance and the effect it has on European qualification. So although we finished 14th last season, that only comes into play for the following campaign. Still, from Celtic's point of view, there's not a massive immediate difference between finishing 11th or 14th in the coefficient rankings when it comes to Champions League qualification. For this season and next, winning the league still means one round of qualifiers before entering the Champions League proper. That's manageable. We've seen worse. We've been through worse. Remember the years when we had to grind through multiple rounds, traveling across Europe in the middle of summer, just for the chance to face a top seed in August? Yeah, this is better. But don't get too comfortable. Looking ahead, things are getting a bit grim. The live UEFA rankings currently place Scotland in 18th. That's a serious drop. And if we finish there, the consequences are significant. For the champions of Scotland, it would mean 3 qualifying rounds just to reach the Champions League group stage. Not 1, not 2, 3. And we're not talking straightforward ties either. We all know how dodgy those games can be. Remember the names like Maribor, Malmo, Cluj, Ferencváros? They still give Celtic fans a bit of trauma. These aren't ties you cruise through. These are battles. So if the downward trend continues, it's back to the grind. 3 rounds, high stakes, and 0 margin for error. And here's the part that stings even more. Scotland might be reduced to just 1 Champions League slot. No safety net for second place. That would mean clubs like Hearts or Aberdeen, if they managed to finish second, wouldn't even have the chance to qualify for the Champions League. Instead, they'd be shuffled into the Europa League or the Conference League. Basically, we're talking about a regression. We'd be back to the years when only the league winner had a sniff of the top table, and everyone else had to settle for scraps. Now, that paints a bit of a bleak picture, yeah? But it's not all doom and gloom. There's a strange little backdoor that might just work in Celtic's favor. Here's how it works. If the winner of the Champions League also qualifies for the next season's group stage through their domestic league, UEFA frees up an extra group stage slot. And that golden ticket doesn't go to the next best team from a big league. No, it goes to the team in the champions path, so the route for national champions, with the highest coefficient. That's how a club like Olympiacos recently went from potentially entering in the second qualifying round to being parachuted straight into the league phase. They had the highest coefficient among the qualifying clubs, and boom, they were straight into the group stage. Now, imagine Celtic in that position. To pull that off, though, we need to seriously boost our coefficient. Olympiacos is sitting at around 53.5. Celtic's live coefficient, 36. There's a gap, but it's not impossible to bridge, especially considering we earned 16 points just last season. So yeah, it's a stretch, but it's within reach if we get serious about Europe. So where do we stand now? As of today, Celtic are ranked 58th in Europe in terms of club coefficient. sandwiched between clubs like Karabag and Ferencváros. That's not exactly elite company. It's not disastrous, but for a club of Celtic size, it's underwhelming. We should be aiming higher. The upside? We've got 3 weaker seasons falling off the coefficient scale in the next few years. That clears space for better performances to boost our score. And with 16 of our 36 total points coming just from last season, we've shown we can make a serious impact with a single good campaign. Let's unpack how we got those 16 points last year. We picked up 2 points for each win. 3 wins equals 6 points. Then there were 3 draws, worth 1 point each, so that's 3 more. That takes us to 9. Now, even though we went out in the playoff round, we still got 7 bonus points just for finishing 21st in the overall Champions League table. UEFA hands those out depending on where you land in the rankings. That's how we hit 16. The good news is that the Europa League awards the same number of points for wins and draws as the Champions League. So every victory still earns 2 points. Every draw still gives us 1. We've already bagged a point with that draw in Belgrade. Now imagine if we notch a few wins and pick up some more draws. We could be looking at another respectable points total this year. Maybe not 16, but something like 11 or 12. That would be solid, especially since a few of our past weaker years will drop off the coefficient table soon. It's all about building momentum. However, where the Europa League doesn't measure up is in bonus points. The Champions League hands out significant bonuses based on finishing position in the group phase. For example, finishing 21st last season got us 7 bonus points. In the Europa League, even if we top the group, we won't get as many points as we did for finishing outside the top 20 in the Champions League. Still, if we finish high enough, let's say in the top 18, we can earn 2 or 3 extra points. Not massive, but every point counts when you're trying to climb the ladder. Clubs like Olympiacos have mastered this. They've made a habit of doing well in the Europa League and even the Conference League. Their coefficient isn't inflated by Champions League runs. It's been built in the so-called lesser competitions. Last season, they finished 7th in the Europa League rankings. That's a massive achievement. And the season before that, they won the Conference League. Those wins stack up. So if Celtic can emulate that, get results, go deep in the Europa or Conference League, and build consistency, we'll be in a much better place 2 or 3 seasons from now. That's why Thursday's match against Braga, even if it lacks the glamour of a tie with Borussia Dortmund or AC Milan, is still hugely important. It's not just about the here and now. It's about building a base that will support the club for seasons to come. We're not in the Champions League this season, fair enough. But we've got the chance to do something meaningful in the Europa League, and that opportunity shouldn't be underestimated. Now, we haven't even touched on the financial side of things yet, and believe me, that's another critical angle. But when it comes to the coefficients, this stuff really matters. Every point won in Europe this season could be the difference between entering next year's Champions League in the second qualifying round or having to slog through 3 ties. Or even, who knows, landing one of those precious automatic group stage spots if the stars align. It might seem abstract now, but it's very real, and it's very relevant to Celtic's long-term ambitions. Right. So now let's talk about the money, because if we're being honest, that's where the real game is played. Coefficients are one thing, but the financial difference between being in the Champions League and dropping into the Europa League is absolutely massive. We're not just talking a few million quid here or there. We're talking a gulf that, over time, can shape transfer windows, wage bills, squad depth, and even how the club is run at boardroom level. And for Celtic, a club that relies heavily on European revenue to boost the domestic income, that gap can't be ignored. Last season, it was estimated Celtic earned just over €37 million from the Champions League. That figure includes participation fees, prize money from wins and draws, ranking bonuses, a little from the playoff round, and a good chunk from what UEFA calls the value pillar. And no, that doesn't even include matchday revenue from ticket sales, hospitality, merchandise, and everything else that comes with packed European nights at Celtic Park. So yeah, the Champions League, it's a goldmine. And when you consider that domestic TV revenue in Scotland is nowhere near what clubs in England or even mid-table sides in Germany or Spain bring in, the importance of that Champions League check becomes even more obvious. Now contrast that with the Europa League. Just for showing up in the group stage, the participation fee is about €4.3 million. That's not a small amount by any stretch, but it's only a quarter of the 18.6 million that Champions League teams receive just for being there. And the difference only gets wider when we talk about prize money. A single win in the Champions League nets you around 2.1 million euro. In the Europa League, it's about 450,000. A draw in the Champions League brings in 700,000. In the Europa League, 150,000. So each result, every point, has a much smaller price tag in this competition. Even where you finish in the group stage makes a massive difference. Finish first in the Champions League overall ranking, and UEFA hands you nearly 10 million euro. In the Europa League, around 2.7 million. If you finish bottom of the group, you still get a consolation payout, but again, it's much smaller. 275,000 for last place in the Champions League, 75,000 in the Europa League. So from top to bottom, every metric shows how financially dominant the Champions League is compared to its little brother. There are still bonuses in the Europa League, don't get me wrong. You finish in the top 8, you get a bonus of 600,000. Not too bad. But if you were to do that in the Champions League, it's a 2 million euro payout. Even finishing 9th to 16th gets you 1 million in the big tournament, while in the Europa League, it's just 300,000. All these small differences add up. Over one season, it might not seem like a disaster, but over 3, 4, 5 seasons, that gap becomes massive. And here's where it really starts to matter for Celtic. We're not a club backed by billionaire oil money. We don't have a sugar daddy throwing cash around. Our budget is built on 3 pillars: season tickets, player trading, and European revenue. The first 2 are solid, but limited. Ticket sales won't suddenly double. And while we've done well selling players in recent years, Hoda, Frimpong, Tierney, we can't rely on a £20 million sale every summer. That leaves Europe as the key variable. And being in the Champions League makes all the difference. That's why missing out this year hurt. Not just in terms of prestige or pride, but in cold, hard cash. Being in the Europa League means we've got to be smarter, more efficient, and, most importantly, successful on the pitch if we want to make up even a fraction of that lost revenue. Because let's be honest, you're not making 37 million in the Europa League. It's just not on the table. Rangers, for example, made around £15 million last season in the Europa League up to the end of the group stage. That's decent. But it's still less than half of what Celtic pulled in from the Champions League. That being said, the Europa League isn't just a financial dead end. There's still money to be made, and more importantly, there's progress to be earned. Celtic haven't had a successful knockout campaign in Europe for far too long. We've struggled to get past the last 16 in any European tournament for over a decade. So while the Europa League might not bring the same kind of cash as the Champions League, it does offer something else: momentum, consistency, and experience. Winning European knockout ties builds belief, builds reputation, and builds a squad that knows how to handle those high-pressure moments. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. Whispers are swirling through the Scottish game this week, and the loudest of them all concern Che Adams. The striker, who had recently been plying his trade in Serie A with Torino, is said to have packed his bags and returned to British soil with a move that has sent Celtic supporters into a frenzy. Word around Glasgow is that Adams, long admired for his blend of power and pace, has quietly agreed terms with the Hoops, leaving the Italian side behind in what many insiders are calling a shock turnaround. The rumor mill began to grind when Adams was spotted at Glasgow Airport late last night, his hood up and his head down, determined to avoid the lenses of fans and reporters alike. Some claim he was immediately whisked off towards Lennoxtown, where Celtic's training ground sits quietly among the hills, though no official confirmation has yet been given. What is known, however, is that the striker had grown increasingly unsettled in Turin. Sources close to the player suggest he struggled to adapt to the slower, more tactical style of Serie A and has been yearning for the intensity and fervor of the Scottish game. If true, this move could prove seismic for Brendan Rodgers, who has been crying out for a reliable focal point in attack. Adams, with his international pedigree and proven ability in the Premier League, would not only bring goals, but also a presence capable of unsettling Rangers in the title race. Supporters of the green and white have already lit up social media, with videos and chants circulating online celebrating a deal that is still, officially at least, under wraps. Torino fans, meanwhile, are left baffled. Adams had only just begun to find his feet in Italy, and many believed he would feature heavily in their plans this season. Yet football is never short of twists, and few are more surprising than this. Until the ink dries and the club issues its statement, it remains a rumor, but one that carries the weight of inevitability. For now, Glasgow waits, restless and eager, to see if Adams will indeed don the famous hoops and write the next chapter of his career under the Celtic Park lights. Hello, fan. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.